This is a tin heart. It says it was made in Mexico. I don't know if we paid $9. I don't know why we would pay $9 for a piece of tin. But I'm showing you this because I'm going to show you a carving that a lot of people have liked. It's a lot of people's favorite. And I didn't know what I was going to do when I started to make it. I'll show you what I did anyway. So this is the carving itself. It's too big to fit under my tripod. This is my tripod. And it took several hours, and I did not plan it. It just kind of happened. And this is how it happened. I found that one of the easiest media to work with when I'm using my carving tools is MDF, medium density fiberboard. And it's compressed. Ooh, what's that compressed thing right there? Oh, it's just a string. Anyway, compressed sawdust, fibers, maybe some recycled paper. I'm not sure exactly what the ingredients are, but it's not real wood, or maybe it was once real wood. And then it's just these fibers and leftovers glued together and pressed into boards, and they can make it to a very specific thickness. This is 1/2 inch. Looks like some 1/4 inch or 3mm right here. I'm not sure exactly how big it is. But the way I get these colors is first I would just take a black spray paint. I'm going to use green in this case. For the big carving up there, I just use black. And I know I had planned to do a space scene, so it was going to be all black, and then I was going to add some green and some orange and some purple, do some nebulae. But my red would not work. The little nozzle got all clogged. This one is clogged too. That's what happens when you don't take care of your stuff. So anyway, this nozzle is chooched. I can't use it anymore. But there's still paint in there. And ask me what that sound is someday. I have a good story about that sound. Anyway, the button, when you have the nozzle up here, you press down on top of the nozzle. Duh. And the nozzle presses down on this little tube. The tube is a straw that goes all the way to the bottom of the can. And propellant pushes it out of the hose or out of the tube and then into your nozzle and makes a cloud of paint. In this case, my red had dried up and I couldn't use it, so I just inverted it and I pressed it down on the board. And when you press down on the tube, it makes little things of paint like that. And you get some on your finger if you're not careful. So with the reds, I realized that that's what I put on the one up there of the heart. I put the red nozzle down, squeezed it and sprayed it. And I realized that if I squeezed them and then dripped them, I could get the drips to go where I wanted, and I could use that to my advantage. I still didn't know what I wanted to make yet, or what I wanted to carve. But the reds started to drip together into a nice, pleasing collection. And I ended up with what, to me, looked like a fire. So, boom, I knew what I was going to do. I had a starting point. Fire. Let's do some fire. And what else would you want to set on fire than a heart? This may or may not have been my inspiration for the carving up there. It may have been subconsciously or subliminally it was my inspiration, but who knows? But I didn't want to do, this Hallmark kind of strawberry looking heart. So I went on Google Images and I found a very medically accurate heart. This is not very medically accurate, but I do have aortae and ventricles and flesh and stuff. I like that a lot more than just a Hallmark heart. So after I had the fire, I sketched out the heart based on the Google image and just started chipping away and carving away. I followed the contours of the red that kind of looked like a flame to me, and it's not perfect, but the result came out, pretty good. Once I had the flame cut out, I wanted it to shine, so I put these radiant lines and added all the little tiny guys. And it didn't look like much until all those little guys were in there. Then all of a sudden, it really was on fire. I really like this one. A lot of people have liked it. And maybe I should finally put a coat of polyurethane on it to protect it, because when I take these things out to show off to my students, they don't always survive. I'll show you an example. One of the early ones that I carved, this one was, I don't know what to call it. Who cares? But I was trying to carve Hokusai's wave, that famous Japanese woodcut. And you can actually see the initial line and how I was going for that wave shape. But once the wave was on there, I kept looking back at Hokusai's wave and thinking, you know, I'm just not ready to do this yet. It has all these little fractal crenellations, and it looks like it would take me just days and days to get all those carved out. And I wasn't looking to do anything too fancy. I just wanted to carve. So I followed the lines that I came up with. First, I just had that top line. Then I added a skinnier one just to follow it. And after that, I kind of saw a creature in there, so I decided to follow that. I didn't know I was going to make a creature. I still don't even know what kind of creature it is. And if you ask my students, sometimes they say it's a whale. Sometimes they say it's a fish. Sometimes they say it's an eagle. Sometimes they say it's a seagull. Well, I don't know what it is. What do you think it is? Anyway, I'm showing you this to show that they don't always survive. This used to be prettier. It didn't have all these marks and scars and scuffs, whatever the heck that is. It's kind of, maybe it got some water on it. It's kind of raised up and it's bloated. But that's okay. I usually use these for practice later on. Ooh, what's that say? Looks like I was writing some Arabic, but I don't know what I was writing. Halal? Halal? Who knows? On to the next one. This one is Hokusai's wave. So I don't always know what I want to carve, but I'll try to copy some old famous artist. What's the next one? The next one that got hurt. This was an early one. I wanted to do a space scene, so again I did black as a base. Then added some orange. You can see the orange here, some purple up here, and I just did little clouds. Purple, orange, maybe there's a little bit of green in here. And then to get the white, I love this because I didn't really plan it. It just kind of happened. Took the white spray paint can, and I, instead of spraying straight down on the board, I turned it to the side and sprayed a little bit up into the air. Not a big burst, but little dots. And then the little dots went up, and then they fell down on here, and they made a bunch of little stars. And once I saw that, I knew this is not going to be just a regular old space scene. I want to do Carl Sagan. That's Carl Sagan, believe it or not. And you can also see where my students got a hold of it, and they took purple crayon, and for whatever reason, they just wanted to apply crayon to Carl Sagan's face. They got his teeth. They did his cool, sleepy little eyes. I thought the eyes were one of the best parts of this, but they ruined it. Oh well, that was fun. Some people think this is me when I show it to them. I understand why. I have some curly long hair now. Oh, so that was it. So spray paint. That's another MDF, 1/2 inch. And I would do a black spray paint until it was black all the way. And then little clouds of color. And then get my carving tools and start carving out those lines. I think I transferred these lines by pasting a photo of Carl Sagan. And then cutting with an X-Acto knife through each of the lines that I thought was going to be important. So lines of his hair, his eye lines, his nose, chin, you know, all that. So I did these basic lines, and then when I pulled the paper away, then I could go deeper and add more details as I wanted to. So that's one way to do it. Just don't let your students touch them. Carl Sagan's protege, Neil deGrasse Tyson. That was a fun one. Very quick. I think I did this before a class one day, maybe an hour or so. I didn't know what I was going to do with the hair, but I think it came out pretty good. Just lots of little scratches. The mustache wasn't easy. Fingers aren't very easy. You can see those fingers look pretty awkward. But his quote, it's not very easy for my elementary school students to really fully grasp. It's got too many clauses or something. What? Nobler? And too many words they're not used to. Cherish, nobler, I don't know. That's a good one. Let's see. Nothing on the back except maybe some little math. I'll use them for scratch paper. And then a student wrote the quote out for me. Again, just black spray paint. That's all it was. And then, how did I get that on there? That's a picture from Google. It's him explaining something. He's really got the meat of his point that he wants to make in his fingers, and he's making his point. I'm Neil deGrasse. Black spray paint, pencil, carve. Here's some geometry. This one I did up in Lake Tahoe. Blue spray paint and then red dots, or red or orange. So blue, and then with those orange dots, I may have done this method a little bit. You can see they're just barely showing through. They showed more before I carved out all these negative spaces. And to get those circles, I just used what I had at hand. I had a roll of tape with me up at Lake Tahoe, so I put down the tape, traced out a circle, and then traced out other circles as they joined together. I was trying to be pretty accurate, at least laying them out 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. And it came together pretty good. And then I would just carve out the intersecting areas. And I just kind of followed my intuition. I didn't plan this out too much. I just started with circles and then took out what I thought would be interesting. And again, I always like to do these radiating lines that kind of make it look like it's bursting out of the center. It kind of brings it alive. That was fun. Just some geometry. Usually I'm doing like figurative stuff or animal or a person, but ooh, that's a good one. This happened at University High School or some high school, French American Internet, private high school in the city that I worked at for a few days. Showed off the carvings. A student came, he was an art student, and carved out this face. And then we used our blowtorch and added some heat, and it makes those lines stand. I'll show you an example of that later. This video is already going on way longer than I expected. All right. This is some feet. Couple of feet from a cover of a book that I really like, and the design, the circles and the feet really stood out to me on the book cover, so I just traced them out, did the circles, smaller circles inside, and then lines. It's really easy to make a very satisfying effect. And then this one is sort of 3D. I carved it out and away from the feet, so the feet really stand out. You see all my little carving marks there. So just over and over and over and over, deeper and deeper and deeper, deeper and deeper and deeper to get that effect. You can see the valley between the 2 feet. Now, I don't know exactly how I knew when I was finished, but at one point I looked at it, I knew you're done. It's a couple of hands or a couple of feet or even a couple of those Muppets that kind of look like those Muppets. This one is very recent. And I don't know, I'll just call this a scratch draft. I'm not terribly happy with it, but I wanted to try something new. This is a piece of redwood that I got from my godfather, Alan. And the image is one I did from memory, from a painting that I really liked at the De Young Museum. You can look it up. It's called Filthy Lucre. I believe it's called Filthy Lucre. And it's by James Whistler. Whistler, who painted his mother. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. If you look that up, you'll find it on the De Young website. And yeah, I got pretty close. But this is watercolor, and they're pretty close to the colors that I can remember from the actual painting. I looked it up later, and I got close, but it's not perfect. But I do like that scene. After the watercolor, then I came in with my carving tools and started to carve out the areas in between the fields. And the redwood is so soft that my carving tools just kind of grabbed and would tear away, so the carving's not that clean, as you can see. So this is a practice. I'm not going to frame it. Probably won't give it. We'll see what happens to it, but it was a good first try. Redwood. These I also did up in Lake Tahoe, and this was fun because it was the first time I tried this one. This was the very first try. Carved out a match, and then I took the board over to the stove. I didn't have my blowtorch. I just put it on top of the stove and let the heat from the stove burn this. It's not going to burn where it was freshly carved, but it burns everything else. So you'll do the carving and you won't be exactly pleased with it, but then once you add the heat and the fire, holy cow, it just comes alive. So this one came together very quickly, very geometric, just straight lines, and some perpendicular lines. Everything's just lines, right? So that was a lot of fun. I carved it out, took it over to the stove, held it over the fire. The fire added its heat and char and everything, and then I'd turn it over and see how it looked, and I would add more heat here because there wasn't enough, so I would heat it there. Just slow and figure it out. And I remember it got a little too burnt over here, so I just took the carving tool and took out the part that was too carved. So you can see. That was fun. That was really nice. And I never really finish. I always thought I would cut this off here, make it more symmetrical or whatever you want to say. There's too much dead space down here. So I thought I'd cut this off, maybe put a frame around it. But nope, I wanted to move on to the next one. So this one has been put aside for now. Maybe I'll frame it someday. I don't know. And then following that method, I made this one. This is pretty good. I'm not going to call it a masterpiece, but I worked really hard on it, and I really liked the result. I just went to the beach at Lake Tahoe, drew the scene. The scene included the lake, the foothills, and then Mount Tallac behind it. And then once I did the mountain, I realized the sky was rather empty. I can't remember if I added the moon or the sun first, but once I added one of them, I knew I was going to have to have the other. And I was thinking about a teacher of mine who loves St. Francis of brother, sun, and sister moon. So when I first thought of this, I didn't know I was going to make an homage to my teacher, but I did. And there we have it. Again, just carved it out. And then this, I did not put this on the stovetop. This one I had my blowtorch, and I very judiciously and carefully burnt over the area until the image really started to come out. So that was pretty fun. This is a piece of poplar wood, 3/4 of an inch thick. So you can see the grain of the wood. This is actually wood. It's a plank out of a tree. It's not like the MDF stuff. So when working with actual wood, you can see the grain. The grain is running this way. So when you're carving with it, you have a much different experience than when you carve against it. When you carve against it, you're bumping into each little one. It's actually... You'll feel it. You have to feel it, I guess, to know what I'm talking about. But you'll get a different experience carving across the grain than you do with the grain. So as you plan out your image on your board, you have to think about that. How hard do I want to work, and which way do I want to work? So that was just pencil on a board, carved and burnt. This was a little recently. This was just black on MDF again, one of my favorites. And my partner and I had been walking around the city, and you know, we don't see cormorants all that often, but then once, like within 1 week, we saw 3 cormorants around the city, and one of them was in Golden Gate Park, swimming around, fishing, and then another one we saw actually flying across the Sunset District, which I don't think I've ever seen a cormorant in flight above the sunset before, so I just needed a subject, and that became the subject. I'm going to carve out this cormorant. So that was fun. I did the cormorant first, just based off a Google image. And then once I had the cormorant, I picked where my center point was, and then I started to draw circles around them. I don't know if they're a halo or just a who knows. I don't know what they are. But I did the circles, and then one by one, I would, cut a radiating line in one of the circles. And then I went to the other one, and I did a radiating line there. And I started to, so I did a bunch here, and then I did a couple there, and I did one there, and then I did 3 there. I don't know if I had a real pattern, but I just wanted to mix it up. So it's heavily carved here and then not very carved here. Just single lines to see the black. Almost entirely carved out right here. I don't really have a method. You'll just figure your method out as you go. But these halos are always very appealing to me once you have your central image done. This was a lot of fun. And this was kind of branching out. Instead of doing just a flat color of spray paint, and instead of doing burning on it, so you only really have 2 colors, the burnt and the non-burnt, I decided to do some watercolor. So I found an image. It was black and white, which was done by a famous Mexican artist named Jose or Juan, I can't remember, but his name was Posada. Let's just say J. Posada, famous Mexican artist. And he did a bunch of etchings, wood carvings, brass, copper etchings for newspapers before they had photography. And one of the images he did was a rooster. You can find it if you look it up. Just look up J. Posada rooster, and you'll find this image in black and white. It'll be on the website of the Metropolitan Museum in New York. I had that picture in a book. In order to transfer it from the book into the block, I first traced a grid onto the book. It's my book, so I put pencil lines. I didn't really mind. Used a ruler, straight line here, and then I moved over, 1.5 inches, 2 inches, parallel line, parallel line. I made this whole grid. I didn't label them, but if you wanted to, you could say this is A, B, C, D, and then you can make the ones that go across 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyway, in the book, I found the eye. I think the eye was the central point, and I knew that the eye was going to be at B2. So within the book, it's at B2. On my block, I made it at B2. And then I figured out, well, where should the feet go? This foot crosses this entire block, so I'll put the foot so it crosses that whole block. This foot fills this whole block. And you just reference those points and then transfer it over to the block so it matches as closely as you can the image in the book. It's not perfect, but I am very happy with it. If I just tried to freehand a rooster, I don't think I'd do a very good job. But copying it on a grid like this worked out very well for me. And while I took this to school to show it off, because you always like to show off your work to your students. And across the room, I looked back at my desk and I could see that there was one of our students had a big paintbrush in her hand. And I just saw her go like that. I didn't see that she was working on this, but I just saw her with a paintbrush and I could see her going like that. And I knew there's no reason she should be painting something on my desk. And I knew that she was painting across my rooster. And you can kind of see it. Luckily, it was just water. I didn't scream at her too much, but you can see where she took this wet brush and just could have ruined it. But luckily, the colors had already set in there. She wasn't busy enough, I guess. Anyway, after I painted the colors on, then I took my carving tools and I would carve out between each field of color. Before I carved it, they kind of bled into each other. So the brown and the gray would blend into each other. The red and the orange would kind of blend into each other. The black and so once I came in with my carving tool and separated those areas, it really came out. I like the way it came out. Some professional artists might tell me I'm screwing up or something, but I don't know. I'm not professional. And I decided, let's put some little marks here. Let's put some feather marks here, and then we'll copy Posada and put these guys like this. He actually did a more intricate set of feathers than I did, but I like how this one came out. I don't know if I'm done yet. We'll see. I'm a 90%er on my projects. I get 90% done and then kind of move on to the next. So watercolors came out very well, especially on this plywood. So that's another material. I got 1/2-inch plywood here. I don't know if this is 3-ply or 5-ply technically. Let's get zoomed in or focused here. There we go. So we've got 1, 2, 3 thick layers of ply and then a thin veneer. Come on. Focus. A thin veneer on the bottom and a thin veneer on the top. And I think that's actually what I'm carving through. I'll have another example of that next. So the plywood took the watercolor very well, and it's very easy to carve this plywood. You just don't want to go too far or else you're going to dig into those layers, which wouldn't be the worst thing, I guess. But I'll show you another example right now. This one I did also very recently with the watercolors. And I have a story behind this image, but it's too long to get into right now. So as you can see, I just drew out the umbrella. I started by drawing an X. I drew a perfect X because I knew I wanted these two things to be lined up, crisscrossing perfectly. So you get this eye for layout, and my eye says I want a perfect X. So I'm going to do it this way and then do another X that's 90 degrees. And then this line of the X became the umbrella, and this line of the X became the torch. Painted them oranges and yellows, browns, purple and black, and then just took away all of the area of the veneer that's around the image. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it. This is probably an 85% project. You can see the purples over here in the scratch area, because this eventually, I knew I could paint here and try to get the purple I wanted and then scratch it off later. So this is kind of like the scratch area. What's this? Oh, this was going to be a drill. I was just doing a quick draft pencil drill. So plywood, another good, the chicken was plywood as well, or rooster. So the plywoods are good. MDF is good. Redwood is okay, but remember it's really soft wood, so it's easy to tear as you're carving, especially if you're carving with or against the grain. Plywood, MDF, redwood, poplar, some good materials so far. And finally, I guess I will get into the tools that I've used for this. I don't have the very first tools I used. The very first tools I used were the what are they called? Speedball aluminum, Speedball linoleum carvers, and they're basically like this. Got a handle, but the Speedball ones are plastic. These are wood. This is from a set that I got off Amazon. It looks like I've sanded off the name. I think it was called Power Grip or something cheesy and generic. But they all have these tips. The tips are metal and they have different profiles. This one is a gouge, and it's got an angle on it. It's got a scoop. You can call it a scoop if you want to cut into it. And so what you're going to do, I'm going to do this in my hand. You should never do it in your hand, but just so I can get close, I'll show you. I'm going to press it kind of at a low angle into the MDF, push forward, and it makes these nice shavings, and then you get this area left over. So relief carving, I would get rid of some of this, and you're carving away the color, so you're getting a negative So you got to plan it out. Do I want green as my base? Do I want brown as my base? But with the MDF, you know, it can kind of just be like a bichromatic thing, because you're really going to put down one color and then carve, and your main color might be the color of the MDF itself, which is this light brown, which may or may not be what you want. So that's the round gouge. Then you have different shapes here. This is a standard chisel, like a knife, and I'll use that for laying out lines. You know, lay out, draw like that if I want to draw a W. I'm not being terribly careful here, but, and then, you know, I could go back later and go over that line that I made. That tore, that can tear. If you push down too hard, or if your tool isn't sharp, it's going to tear, especially if you haven't prepared this properly. So I don't want any tears, but I'm not working very carefully or very slowly right now. So 2 different shapes on that. I've got a bunch of different shapes of these, but these aren't my primary carving tools anymore. These ones were replaced by a set I got from my teaching partner. Finally, here's the V gouge. Very, very useful. I use this for a lot of stuff. So it's like the round, but it's a V, and it gives you a sharper line. Makes like a little valley. And you can turn these tools. It's just not as, you know, you got to just learn. You got to try it. Get some finesse if you want to make a turn. Don't carve too deep. You have to get the right angle. Instead of having a really steep angle where I'm carving down, and I don't want to have too shallow of an angle where, you know, I'm going flat basically, but you got to come up just, I don't know, who knows, 25, 30, someone knows. But you'll get the feel for it, and then you'll know for yourself. This is the worst, because look how I'm holding it. If I were to slip with this tool, right into my hand. Which brings me to this new set that I got from my teaching partner. He's very nice. He knew I carved, so he went out and got me one of the fancier carving tools. These are called Flex Cut. This isn't a commercial, but I do like them. There's another V gouge. That's the V gouge that comes with the Flex Cut set. And they all have these nice palm handles. So that fits in my palm like that. And I kind of press down there and then press into like that. And then usually when I got 2 hands and I'm doing fine work, I'll actually guide the front with my other finger, which is nice and safe, because then I know I'm not holding anything and I'm not going to slip and hit my hand. Both hands here are behind the cutting surface. These tools, people know, the company knows that you're going to buy this as your starter set of tools maybe, and so every kit comes with Band-Aids, because they know most people are going to cut themselves when they first try this. I've cut myself, but I've never pulled a Band-Aid out of here because I was a more mature and practiced carver once I got these into my hands. These tools have to be sharpened from time to time, so the company makes a very nice sharpening, or I don't know, it's not exactly sharpening, it's conditioning maybe. And as you're carving, you know, you're going to be dulling it. You're going to be getting rid of the sharp, hard cutting edge, and every now and then you have to condition it by putting it onto the appropriate shape. I'm doing the V gouge, so I'm going to put it on the inverted V, which is just a triangle. Lay it over the top, and then pull it back a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no magic number, I guess. More than 3, less than 18. And then I have to get each face, the silver face there and the silver face there. So I'm going to put it on the other side. This is a piece of cork. Sometimes it's leather. This might be leather. I don't know. This here is leather. And I'm going to put one of the faces down. I'm going to pull back. Then I'm going to pull back on this side. And that should have conditioned this cutting edge. So now it should go very smoothly. More smoothly is more safely. And then finally this honing stuff, you can put it on there. It helps you get a good cutting surface. So this set came with a bunch of different profiles. A big wide scoop, a even wider scoop, almost no curve to that one, but you use this to get rid of large areas of material. The I'll call it a U gouge. Won't focus, come on. There we go. And then the V gouge. Very, very nice tools. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. And I put them all in this box. I built this box specifically for these, so it doesn't hold the Flex Cut as well as they should, but oh well. It holds my carving tools. That's all I care about. And where's the lid for that? So make a smart box for your tools. This one's got a sliding lid. There we go. That was fun. A purpose-built box. Very happy with that. Now, I'm making this video for my niece Miriam, who's going to get a new tool in the mail very soon. And it's another carving tool, but it's a power carving tool. And it's a rotary tool. This one happens to be a Dremel, but this isn't a commercial. However, the Dremel is pretty much the industry, the leading company of rotary tools, at least for the home maker. So this is the main tool. It's all it is a motor. There's a motor inside of here. You can turn the speed up and down, on and off, and that's it. Turn the motor on. Then usually if you don't have this special attachment on it that I have, you would take this cutting tool. This here is a burr, a small burr, very small burr. I'm going to replace it before I demonstrate. And that tiny round head on the top is what spins thousands of rippems, revolutions per minute, thousands of rippems. And while it's spinning, you're just going to slowly and carefully push it through your material, and it's going to spin and carve away at the material for you. What I really like about this is you don't have to push with the carving tool. You're not applying any force. This has all the force inside of it. Excuse me, this has all the force inside of it. And it transfers it through that shaft into this tool, and then all you have to do is guide the tool as you move through the material. Let's see. Okay, so I said you can change speeds. I usually keep it at 15 or 20. Let's see if we can get a look at it. Well, you're not going to see it while it spins. Here is that green I sprayed earlier. So that's with the small burr. You can sand it and get rid of the mess later. So, I mean, this ain't coming out that well, but I am ripping the MDF with this little carving tool. I think real hardwood or, real wood would work better than the MDF stuff with this tool in particular. So this is a great tool because you can switch out all the little bits. This just happens to be this small, tiny little burr bit. In order to change it, I'm going to press this button. That's going to lock the spinning shaft that's inside of here. And I'm going to grab it. There's a plier that comes with it, but who knows where that tiny little plier is, so I'm just going to use my regular pliers. Or it came with a wrench. And I'm going to twist this guy right here. I can't think of what it's called right now, but we'll call it part of the collet. This here is actually the collet. The collet holds your cutting bit. So I'm going to put the collet back in there. And I'm going to replace my bit with this bigger one. I don't know what it's called. Cone nose burr. Let's just call it that. And it's got all these sharp edges on it. And while it spins, it does your cutting for you. So we'll put that guy back on there. Put in the bit. I don't put it all the way in. Don't put it all the way in. Put it all the way in, then pull it back out a little bit so some of the shaft is showing. Then twist that with your fingers till finger tight. I'm going to lower it back down a tiny bit. And then still holding the spindle lock, I'm going to grab with my wrench pliers and twist just a little bit. So now I got a much bigger cutting bit. There you go. I like that better. I think the small bit was just too small. It was actually just tearing the surface of the MDF. But you can get that, if you go slower, lay it out better, you'll do a better job than I did. One thing I don't want you to do is to press hard. There's no reason to press hard. This thing is going to do all the work for you. You don't need to force it. Here's what happens if you press hard. So, several things just went wrong. As I was pressing it down, you could hear the machine struggling. It was going... So, it was spinning nice and fast, and then because I was forcing it in there, it was grabbing it. The wood was grabbing it, and it was putting strain on all the parts of this. It was straining here. It was straining the shaft inside of here. It was straining the motor inside of here. We shouldn't have to strain. This thing is traveling so fast. Just let it provide all the force. You just have to slowly, gently guide. So don't press hard. Don't press hard. Don't try to force anything. And don't dig deep with these. You don't need to do that. We're just trying to go over the surface. If you want to go deep, do one pass, then go another pass over that same area, and just keep doing passes until you get as deep as you want. But try not to use force, because anytime you're forcing a tool to do anything, you're actually hurting the tool, and you're making it more dangerous for yourself. The other thing you might be able to see is that it's kind of dark in there. So as it was spinning so fast and I was pushing so hard, it was creating tons of heat, and all that heat can actually make this thing smoke. I can smell it right now. It's a little burnt. And on the very tip of my bit here, it's actually got some burnt parts on it. So you're hurting your tools when you force them. I think you got the point. Don't force the tool. You don't have to force the tool. And, just go nice and slow. The other thing to remember is this is spinning so fast that it might try to travel without your permission. So even though you're not pressing hard, you are keeping a firm grip, and you are the one in control of this tool. Don't let it control you. And you don't want it to take off while you're pressing down. It might try to spin. It might try to travel in the direction it's spinning, or against this position, against the direction that it's spinning. So just go nice and slow. And shallow. Pretty good. Get a nice result with a very versatile tool. You can switch out the tips, so it's not just these wood burrs. And I got this little block here. I put all the little bits in here. These aren't nearly all of them. I don't know how many hundreds or scores of bits that they make, but they make different ones for polishing and grinding and cutting different things. Here's a tiny little saw blade. I never really use that. If you want to cut something, use a real saw. But maybe if you're doing small miniature work, here's a little brush. Never use that. But it would brush something at 30,000 RPMs if you want. A wire brush right here. Different polishing burrs. I don't know what this one's for. Never used it. Someone might be able to tell us. Another wire cut brush. Let's see. This one we have used. I like this a lot. It's a diamond coated cutting wheel. And the only thing strong enough to really cut through glass is this diamond cutting wheel. So we've taken wine bottles, and while this is spinning within this shaft, we can cut. All right, I'm running out of time. I got to run out to an appointment. But what was I saying? This is the glass cutter. So this thing spins super fast. We kept it in this shaft far away from any electricity. All the electricity is in this part. But this stayed far away from our work. And the power was transferred through this shaft through a spinning wire. It's pretty fascinating. It's very simple, but the way this thing works is just, well, like, what an ingenious solution. So the bit was in here, far away from any kind of water, because we had to use water while we were cutting. We didn't want any glass dust in the air, and we were trying to cool off the cut while we were making it. And this thing just, I'm not going to do this can, of course, but we were cutting through wine bottles. We were getting rid of the neck of the bottle and making wine glasses, or, glasses out of wine bottles. It worked okay. I'd try it again. The cut was very rough, and we had to do a lot of work to smooth it out. I used different bits to smooth it out. But just another example of why this is such a great tool to use. Rotary tools. Rotate any kind of cutting tool or shaping tool or grinding tool, and you can do just so many things with this right here. The one that my niece is getting in the mail is not exactly like this, but it's close enough. All right, that's enough on carving tools, and all my show-offing. I hope you make your own. I hope to see it soon.